So I want to talk about G2 a little bit because obviously, like they came out top four at MSI. They looked really good. They legit looked like a top four team in the world.
And could have been
Um,
third, obviously. They could have beat T1.
yeah, yeah, they could have beat T1. So they were looking very strong after spring split. Then they come in, stumble a little bit in summer, like definitely have a lot more difficulties, kind of making a good run into Worlds. Do you think this is like fatigue or meta dependency, because it didn't seem like they were capable of playing a lot of the good meta picks, particularly around Caps when he's not on the Tristana. Um, Yike has had some very, I would say, strange pickups throughout the playoffs. Is Jungle Gwen really better than Brand in a lot of the compositions that they're running? My answer is no, but then he plays Brand and misses all his skill shots. Um, is Hansama, who doesn't play Zeri, very
Yep.
good a lot of these
Yeah.
times. Like they kind of got the runaround from Mad Lions, who is just flipping the Ezreal, Zeri, and Corki into all the different lanes. And it felt like G2 was not willing to select these
Yep.
champions because they don't have the same versatility. What's your read on G2? Because it was rougher than normal, I would say, for them,
Yeah.
especially considering how good they were at MSI.
Well, I mean, I think BB on your lad's show, I think it was Perispike with Dom and Yamato, talked a lot about it. It was a really, really good show.
Oh,
It was just
Sackdown.
like
Sackdown.
Sackdown, yeah. And it was great. He just went into look, hey, it's
Yeah.
not really clicking. Like they had to stop scrims to just be like, look, we just need to hang out and like remember what it's like to actually just enjoy each other's company and just be friends. So I think there's definitely a lot that's going on behind the scenes, and I think that then started to spill over into the game as well, because there was a lot of trying to figure out how they wanted to approach the game. Whether that was, hey, we want to try and go for like some kind of mage mid, because we saw the same from BLG a little bit, where like Knight coming back after MSI was like, I'm going to play Annie, I'm going to play Ari. So I think it was kind of interesting to see that they had a similar ish read, but it definitely didn't work. And then we started to see the Gwen, which felt like another try. Hey, let's see if this goes well. But um, like Yike could still like Yike's brand was great. So it was kind of weird to me that they tried so hard to horseshoe in a lot of these issues or these strange picks, which just caused issues. But I think partly it was one, a bad meta read. And then secondly, I do think there was stuff going on behind the scenes where Yike was just not gelling with the picks he had, with how he wanted to play, with how he wanted to try and play around mid lane. Even the engages he had when he was on the Gwen, like there's that one in mid lane against MDK, where he just ghosts in his Gwen, gets completely destroyed by Alvaro's Alistair, and it just all falls apart. So I think there was a lot of clear issues. The big question to me is, as I say, have they solved them? I won't know until we hit main stage, but I think this is definitely a team that has shown in the past that they are able to get people around them that will support them, get them through a lot of these issues. And as you say, coming into MSI, a lot of the same problems were levied at them. Like their early game sucked. They have a mid game, but they can't really get anything together. And then we saw them at MSI and they popped off, right? So I don't think it's something that they haven't dealt with before. I think it'll just be a case of, is it as easy for G2 to find a pick like Poppy that kind of warps the draft around G2 so
Or the
much that it makes
Lissandra
it easier?
also,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that has been like if we think about G2's strength internationally, like the Poppy, the support Lissandra into Rakan. Sure, the Gwen doesn't work, and like we can all point that out, but it doesn't mean it can't. Like, I don't think Gwen jungle is inherently a terrible choice. Like, there's probably scenarios where it makes a lot of sense, just not where they were picking it in the playoffs, for LEC. But that is, if we look at G2 strengths, it's like versatility, creative shot calling on the fly, ability to play from behind. In probably the best level 1 team in the world from the past few years. Like they have the best set plays. Weird picks that really warp the meta around them for strange bans, which then in turn give them power picks, right? And if you don't ban the weird pocket champion, then it just completely like messes with your draft and messes with your gameplay because they're the only ones using it. So G2's strengths, I don't think have gone away heading into Worlds, and so I don't necessarily buy that this team isn't going to have a very strong Worlds performance.
Yeah, I agree, and I think to give them the work they put in over the last 2 years is really starting to come to fruition, because it has been like, hey, we're bringing in lads like Duffman to make sure we've got a mid game that's strong, that we can actually figure out how to play. Like, I don't go into Worlds thinking, oh Jesus, one of the lads isn't going to hold up in lane
Right.
phase. You're just like, hey, look, they're
By
going
the
to be
way, also shout out to that story where Broken Blade even said that actually Alfari literally helped him with his laning. And by the way, you did see an improvement in his laning, I thought, after that.
Yeah, big time. Like I think he shouted him out on the broadcast about like so often BB is just like Alfari's giving him so much help, but you can see the difference, right? And I think that's where previous iterations I'd be like, can we fully hold up to like Elkin on, or like, you know, if T1's bot lane suddenly pops off, like, are we just going to fall apart? Like, I still think there is maybe a little bit for bot lane, but like nowhere near the same extent. And also, like, I think the shift back over towards like Syndra and stuff being in the meta for caps is going to be super nice. I think there is definitely a shift towards champions that are going to be great for this team. And especially when there is such a massive change coming in.
Is it true when you said that earlier on the last segment, Monty? Was it an example where you were saying like ADC is going to be more like Jinx Aphelios? Is that what the actual patch is going to be?
So Ox mentioned that.
Or was he meaning that as a hypothetical if it happened? Did he mean that this patch is going to be more like those champions?
Well, I think a lot of the meta is going to change just because, you know, especially with the Ziggs nerfs coming in, you know, like I do think like you're gonna see a pretty big shift. And Ox also was saying like, oh, he thinks, you know, Caitlyn Lux or these very like lane dominant champions are going to take hold.
That should be perfect for Summer. By the way, first of all, Jinx and Aphelios are the champions he wants to play. And then secondly, I can tell you from all the interviews I've done with people who've played with Hans Sama, they say he's like obsessed with lane, basically. He's the guy who just wants to win lane really hard, basically. So I think actually also, he also clearly didn't really love the Zeri meta, mate. That wasn't his shit, was it? Like, he wasn't the guy who was like, give me that, like all those LCK players. So I feel like, because that's the other thing, I feel like it's really easy to pick holes in Yike, especially this last split, and obviously Broken Bladed typically, because people think they want him to be a carry top lane. He doesn't get to do that all the time in this team. But if you think about the strength of G2, it's almost always when the bot lane's really good. When Hansama's really percolating, when Mickey can get his picks, that's the team that really could have been third at MSI. Like, for real, could have like clapped T1 twice. Like, that's the team you want to see. Because actually, you know what? If you look at those players mechanically, Hansama and Mickey X can play with those Asian players we're talking about, Dagda. They're not getting completely dwarfed like some of these other guys out there.
Yeah, 100% agree. And also, like, to give Mickey his due, it's not only just his lane phase. Like, this guy is a menace on the map. He's so good at finding these timing windows that he can play around. Yeah, and like, rivaling, if not better, than a lot of the supports that are coming in from the eastern regions as well. And I think a lot of guys have him rated super highly as well, if you look at like, the tier list for players that are floating around. So I think it is going to be a case of like not only just dictating the pace of a lane phase, being able to get caps ahead or play off of like a Syndra stun from caps into maybe there's a Viego or a Lee Sin or whatever. I don't know if it's Jarvan or what the meta is going to be jungle wise, but if that is the plan, suddenly you can get very far ahead very quickly. So and then you've just got your late game insurance in a Jinx. And I know, like, looking at the top few picks in solo queue, it's like the Jins, the Kai'Sas, the Ezreals, but I mean, you're fine with that as Hansama. So I think you're going to be totally fine. And then in that regard, Viego has kind of been more towards what Yike has wanted to play coming in. Like, he was a Kha'Zix trick when he started. So kind of going back to his bread and butter as well, where he's not trying to figure out what the hell he wants to play. He's just got his three basics. Like, I think it's going to be great. I think it's just going to be so much easier for them to operate.
By the way, we forgot about that too, Monty. That's another thing on the Orc segment. There's another factor. If Viego comes back, that is going to be right in Orna's fucking wheelhouse immediately again, mate. He'll be loving that. Yeah, absolutely. I also think to myself, that's going to be a Razork fucking mega pick right there as well, hopefully.
Yeah. It's funny looking at the teams. Like, every single time I'm like thinking of the meta, I'm like, this just is great for almost every mid jungle that's going to the tournament. Like, I want to see what Kanye can do on Viego, Lee Sin, what Tien can do, what Razork can do, what like, and then mid lane is like, oh, if we get like Silas starting to creep back in, I mean, that's insane for Knight, for Showmaker, for a bunch of these players. So it's just, I think this is just going to be such a cool Worlds meta.
Yeah.
That and so much playmaking potential that it's going to kind of force a lot of like Caps to step up, Humanoid to step up, if we are going to see LEC actually try and contest with these lads.
Do you think people have overblown that aspect? Because I think what people are missing is the last few Worlds actually have had quite a lot of options as to what you could do. You didn't have to just go the obvious angle. So when people say they're buffing Orianna and Desir in the meta, they think that means that you can only play those two champions. So Faker's like, brilliant, it's my world to get. That's like, you can still play all this other shit too. Like, you don't have to only pick that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, like, If it is Orianna, Orianna has counters, right? And like you're going to end up just going down the tier list. And I'm sure we'll start off with a Syndra and an Orianna, and then suddenly this pick comes out because that's strong into this, which is then Rise, strong into Rise, which
yeah.
It's only like, hey, these champions happen to be strong, but it's only a matter of time until people start to break that and find the things. And I mean, it's the reason Team One are champions, right? Is we had a meta and they just broke the whole thing with the double AD carry bot. So it's only a matter of time until someone brings it out. But I think that is the joy of Worlds as well, is seeing teams that can break that. And usually it is a team like G2. So we're just hoping it's them again.
I mean, I think it's also interesting, at least at this Worlds, that we're not going to have, any of the Asian, like the Chinese or Korean teams in play-ins, right?
Oh, true.
And so, I wonder how much insight into the meta we're actually going to get into, from play-ins, basically, because, this isn't an example of, especially because when it's hosted in Europe or in North America, the Asian teams just stay in Asia until the last possible second. So a lot of the scrims are happening or have happened, because play-ins about to start, in China or Korea. So because nobody who is going to be playing in play-ins has been exposed to that meta, and it is like a disease, right, that gets transmitted. So even if none of the play-ins teams were actually scrimming against any of the LPL or LCK teams, by this point in time, they would have been like in contact through teams that they were scrimming. And so it would kind of rub off on them. And this is why, in my opinion, like the Worlds in Europe and North America are always weird, because the Asian teams just don't leave. So unless it's in North America and teams go to Korea to scrim and then come back to North America, but there wasn't time because this Worlds is so early, there's such a short window between the end of LCS and LEC and Worlds that there wasn't time for like the double jet lag adjustment, right? So teams just went to Europe. And sometimes Europe does figure out great metas that can, surprise Eastern teams, but more often it's that the Asian teams just show up with, because they're better teams, a much more powerful like version of the meta. So play-ins, this is one of those instances, is what I'm trying to say. The play-ins might look nothing like the actual Swiss stage.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the first time. Like even when Worlds was in the US in 2022, like we had that Amumu support pick that was like everywhere in play-ins and then just completely disappeared throughout the main tournament. So yeah, it's definitely there. So I think it'd be interesting to see, but I know for like teams like G2, they regularly do get scrims against the top teams. So I'm curious if it's a case of, hey, we're going to like sneak a little slip across the Fnatic to be like, hey, here's what you should be practicing, but you never know, right? But I think there's definitely going to be.
Also, I feel like that's culturally where the divide appears, Dagda. I could believe the LCK teams might slip that note under the door, like, is the picks too much? I feel like in Europe, we just want the other team to lose, though. Like, we want them to get shown up by T1. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I feel like.
I mean, maybe you're right. So, but yeah, I think it's just trying to figure out. Because like even Ox was talking about, right? Like the Caitlyn looks and things like this, like there is always going to be something that comes in that you're not really seeing a huge amount of, and then suddenly it just comes out of the blue. So, and especially as I say, like you're moving away from so many different things. It feels like trying to figure out, like, even down to, is it a Viego Lee Sin, or do we go for Jarvan, or do we go for Silas mid, or do we like, how far down the iterations have we gone? If it is just Orianna and Syndra, to like, does TF suddenly start to come out? Is Rise already been talked about as mega strong? Like the meta that we have is going to be entirely different from what these lads are coming across with. Even for guys like Nice, who's a big Annie player, it's like you just don't know. And I agree with you. I'd be very surprised if the meta that we have over the next like 5 days of play-ins is the same as what we actually come into main stage with.
On the topic of meta and reading the meta, what can you expect and what will the Asians think of us in the Western side? The team, obviously, we should talk about now is Mad Lions, because one, I still can't even believe they're here. But to be fair, if you beat G2 in the best of 5, you probably should be there. But even so, it's so like it's one of those teams. Look, it used to be BDS with Adam. I always just want to like be the fly on the wall when the Asian top team plays these people first. Like that's for real. He's actually doing that. Like I want to know, is Merwin really just going to have a fucking randomizer for his draft picks? Like what are we going to do with this? What are your expectations for Mad Lions? Where's your head up with this team, Dagda?
I mean, there's definitely going to be the randomizer. Like, there has to be by default. Like, there is no way that it's not going to be.
It's almost the job of the team, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's, as harsh as it sounds, like, I just don't have any faith in them to really get there. Like, I want to. Like, they're a fun team. They're a bunch of rookies, and I want them to be able to have like a great experience and stuff like that. But I do think it's kind of just going to be a reality check where you come in and you're like, well, you're playing against the top teams. The fact that G2 were so often able to sneak a ward in behind you when you got these leads to absolutely destroy you is only going to get 10 times worse. They're not going to make the same early mistakes a lot of the times that G2 was in those finals as well. So it just feels like they're going to get blasted out of the ward. Like if you put them up against a team like LNG that are crazy slow and just slowly playing off of these timing windows that they find, it's like you're just done for. So I think, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for MDK either. Like I think they kind of need to get shown the ropes of like what actually this could look like. And that's where you'll be able to bounce back. But from Mirwan's perspective, I think his best bet is to still try and go for these crazy picks, because I think the resounding thing I've heard from a lot of people is Mirwan's just not great on a huge amount of the meta picks. Like he's good, but he's just not up to the standard that you really need to be able to control it. So if he goes up against guys like Bane, 369, Zeus, like they're just gonna destroy him. So I think go for something that's a bit more off meta, try and throw a wrench in the works and just see if you can hold on. But I don't know how well they're going to do once they start to come into, I mean, even guys like Team Liquid, like I think Team Liquid's going to be a stress for them too, let alone if they come up against any of the LPL or LCK teams.
Do you buy that MDK is going to make it into Swiss?
I think so. Like I think them 100 Thieves and PSG Talon, I'm kind of like, yes. And then it's just a case of who else follows. I don't think teams are clean enough or even like fully understand how to punish MDK in a lot of ways, because MDK still have a very good early game. Like Elyoya does do a good job of keeping control, and they are able to
always
find these leads.
You know what I really liked about the difference between Mad Lions in playoffs versus what we had seen from them throughout most of the season was this roster started with just playing around Elyoya 24/7. It's like nobody does anything unless Elyoya is there, right? He's the tip of the spear, he's the one going in, and everybody else just plays very passively. When Elyoya's there, that's where the play is being made. There is no like cross mapping from Elyoya. There's nobody like all-inning in lane if Elyoya is not there. It's like it must happen around Elyoya. And that's where they found success. When they moved away from that is when they started to really hurt. And I noticed in playoffs it was that way again. It was like if Elyoya is there, Elyoya is calling the play. We are playing for Elyoya and around him. Like he is calling the dive. We're going to be there, right? And that is going to be very effective, I think, at play-ins against worse teams because they have a very distinct identity, and they're really quite good at using that identity when they decide to abide by it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the punishments that were made against them by teams like Fnatic and G2 and all that aren't going to be seen in play-ins. Like you're not going to have teams that are preemptively putting TP wards in behind you, or teams that are effectively pushing out wave states, so you end up in awkward positions and stuff. It's and even from the challenge I feel like they're going to have in the early stages just isn't going to be there as much. And that's why I think like teams like PSG Talon would be the ones that would actually contest them, or because I think PSG play a very solid macro game. Like they play out through side lanes well, but apart from that, I just don't see like GAM or Vikings really like getting up there. Like GAM has some better macro than Vikings, but I don't really see them doing a huge amount. Maybe Hawks on like a weird off day for MDK could take them just because they do love these like flank TP ward plays and stuff, but there's just no real team that I look at and go, oh yeah, this is the team that stylistically beats Mad or can contest them in a lot of ways.
All right, here's the obvious question, which is, I do feel like the question is just centered around caps, but it's how far can G2 go? Because I will say, even though it maybe like simmered a little bit towards the end of the season finals, aside from that, if people don't know, this actually was one of the best caps years ever. It might even be contender for his best. Yeah, especially the earlier you go, he was fucking smurfing those first few splits bros. Like, I used to think some of the series they won back then, they definitely could have got cracked by a couple of teams, but he used to just pull it out the fire every time. Like, it was unbelievable. So you do have to look, and look, we can debate on all the G2 players where the floor is, but the ceiling for caps is fucking massive. Like, again, when I was doing a tier list pro, I'm not even trying to be biased. People don't know I was more of a perks guy. But I tell you what, if you actually look at mid laners, if you look at some of the mid laners coming out the LPL and LCK, they're not that crazy. It is people like fucking people who historically have been maligned, like Zeka. It's people like Zhao, who's kind of long in the tooth. Like, caps actually can be, for real, I think, like, what, like a 4th or 5th best mid laner? Like, he looks pretty good headed into this one.
Yeah, especially because like Xiaohu's kind of getting towards the end of his career, and you just
Faker hasn't been great.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of people below him, mate.
Yeah, I do think it's funny. I think the shift back over towards control mages probably brings Faker up, but puts Xiaohu further down because I think he was a bit of a Lucian merchant for a lot of the split.
He's playing a bit of the Zeri too as well, yeah.
Yeah,
true.
exactly. Yeah, but it was like he kind of had these few picks that he could do, but his performance at the start wasn't great of the split. But I think for Caps, I think you kind of hit on it there, Thorin. It's like the flexibility, but the versatility that he has is insane. Where he kind of like figures out exactly what his role needs to be in this meta, and it's just excels at it. So like oftentimes
it's another thing to say, right? He's not actually just being played around like a perma carry. Like sometimes he actually completes the draft clearly, doesn't he?
Yeah. And I think that's what makes him so terrifying is that it's like not only the fact of, hey, we can give him the Silas and he's going to pop off and he's going to have this insane mechanical outplay that you're just going to be like, wow, what a player. But it's also hey, I know that my job right now, the best way for me to win the game is I'm going to go sit in this side lane for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to farm up on Azir. I'm going to farm up on this Smolder and I'm going to come back and I'm going to win the game. It's not going to look flashy. It's going to be a very slow burn. It's going to be a bit of a boring game, but that's what I need to do and I'm going to win the game. So I think it's kind of his understanding of what is needed from him as a mid laner and mid lane role at any given time is really, really good. And even when they're swapping over to like an Ari or they brought it the Annie earlier on, you could still see a very clear understanding of what is needed from him when he plays this different style or this different role. And I think that's where Caps is just so strong. Whereas when you look at players like, say, Zeka, right? His Yone has been absolutely fantastic. He's had a great split. Like, I'm not going to take it away from him.
Oh, yes, mega.
On a bloody mission. But it is a case of, hey, you kind of look and you go, oh, I understand what Zeka does as a player. Like, this is what he fits into this bubble. Whereas when I look at a player like Caps, I can see so much more of how he kind of shifts into these different roles, if he needs to be supportive, if he needs to be the carry, if he needs to play some other style.
Well, also, I mean, at least as far as Caps goes, like we talked about the Syndra always being one of his good champions. LeBlanc is also very strong right now. Silas also very strong right now. So I mean, these are picks that definitely trend towards Caps. I mean, on the focus of Zeka as well, like Yone is still going to be probably the top mid lane champion, but Silas and Akali and Ari are also going to be probably pretty viable at this tournament. So, you know, Zeka might have a bit of a field day at this one. But I think Caps, that, you know, as far as Caps' pool goes, it feels like this is going to be a champion pool that's much more comfortable for him. Like, obviously, he was a great Tristana player. Was he a great Corki player, really? Probably not.
He's definitely on the level of the LP on the LCK mids. They were cracked on that champion. Yeah.
But that's what I mean, right? And like, that wasn't a dig at Zeka. Like, I do think, but I think he's phenomenal. And I do think the meta is still going to sit him. But I think it's the same for every mid laner. Like, when I look at Knight, I think, you know, the Silas, he's an insane Syndra. He's great in Ari. He's a Kali, was nuts. Like, he can play all these champions that we're starting to slot into. Caps is the same. Like, Zek is the same. There's so many different champions. Even for Xiaohu a little bit, like the Syndra is still very good, but some of the other ones are a bit missed. But there's still champions there that I'm like, oh yeah, this is hitting for so many of these players as we start to move in that it's just going to be fire. Like, I'm just so excited to see all these guys play off.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.